I'm gonna link two of the builds for the support scrapper in a second here.
Yeah, go for it.
That didn't work.
What? Oh yeah, it's blank, bro.
Let's build.
Yeah, these are the builds that I will focus on. And I know there are different versions going around, like Altruism Rune and all of that, but I feel like these are the sort of basic builds that you can use as a support scrapper. And the role that you will be filling in a Zerg is mainly for cleansing and providing heal. And that's sort of the mentality you need to have when you're playing a support scrapper, that you will be providing almost no, how should I say it, kill potential other than Hammer 5 in the range bomb. You will be providing sustain. And for oh, I'm cutting off.
A little bit.
Yeah, you'll be using minstrel sets, full minstrel armor, weapons, and trinkets. If you don't have minstrel trinkets, you can use any of the other healing sets available. For runes, there are a few different runes that you can use. I would recommend monk runes, and those are probably the most popular right now. But you can use water runes or Nature's Bounty if you don't have a full set of monk runes. And for sigils, the sigils vary a bit between the two builds. You'll probably want to run with the Sigil of Transference in both builds, and then maybe use a stacking sigil like Sigil of Life or Benevolence for the standard build. And then for the Boonscript build, I use Sigil of Absorption. So it's pretty simple, actually. There's no weird stuff going on with runes or armor. Altruism, yeah. If you want to use Altruism rune, you use the Mortar Kit. I will be talking a bit about that build later. So moving on from the gear to traits. Hold on a second. If you look at the standard build, we have Alchemy, Inventions, and Scrapper. We can start in Alchemy. The first trait you want to take is Health Insurance. And this is basically just a pure healing boost to yourself and to allies when you're using Medkit. It's pretty simple, straightforward. The second line, you want to take Combat Cure, which gives, every time you cleanse someone, you give them regen. And your regen ticks are pretty strong there, but between 400 and 500 health each second. So unless someone has stronger regen, yours is going to be the one that ticks. It's also a good filler boon to protect stability or other more important boons, because you will be cleansing so often. This is going to be applied all the time. In the third line, you take Purity of Purpose. This is the most important trait for, yeah, definitely. The most important trait in for the support scrapper. And if you look at the trait, you have a list. Basically what it does, it makes all your cleanses convert conditions into boons or the boon counterpart. And you have the entire list here if you look at the trait. And some of the boons are quite important to remember. For example, burning converts into Aegis. So let's say you're standing on a dragon banner, you can put down your cleanse field and negate quite a bit of the damage. You also have immobilize converting into resistance. So you can look at the list here and try to remember the most important ones. Probably the strongest trait in the game right now for engineers. Moving to inventions trait line. The first trait, and I should say also the inventions trait line is different in the boon script build. I don't take inventions for that build, but more on that later. So first trait in inventions, overshield. And you can take this trait even though you use hammer instead of pistol shield. It doesn't do anything other than increase the effectiveness of protection on yourself, which is a nice perk. The other traits in this line is pretty bad, to be honest. The second line, you can either take Soothing Detonation, which I recommend. Every time you blast something, combo field, you heal for about 1.2k. And you have two blast finishers. If you don't, two. Medkit 5 and Elixir Gun 4. Or you can, if you feel like, if you're new to engineer and you feel like you're too slow in the zerg or fight, you can take Mecha Legs, which is the third trait in the second line. And it gives 25% movement speed and reduced condition duration for immobilize, cripple, and chill. In the third line, the Grandmaster traits, I have seen a lot of people who go Medical Dispersion Field. I do not recommend that trait. It got nerfed recently from 50% to 25%. What it does is any healing that you do to yourself, you deal a percentage of that as healing to others. But it's a bit buggy trait. Some skills require you to have taken damage. Some skills require you to have taken no damage, and it doesn't work for everything. It doesn't work for region boon and a few other effects. I would recommend taking Anti-Corrosion Plating, and this is a super strong skill trait. When you grant protection to an ally, you cleanse conditions from them. And you may ask, where does our reconstruct? Yeah. Where does our protection come from? We don't have a skill that gives protection. If you go back to Alchemy Purity of Purpose and go down to Vulnerability, you'll see that every time you cleanse Vulnerability, you'll give protection. And every time, if you have this trait, every time you give protection, you'll cleanse an additional condition. And because Vulnerability is so common in fights, you'll be cleansing a lot more than you usually would with this trait. But you can try Medical Dispersion Field and see if it looks nice with the green numbers, but I recommend Anti-Corrosion Plating. Moving to Scrapper, the first trait we take still as a support Scrapper is Gyroscopic Acceleration. And this is probably the only trait that matters in Scrapper for a support engineer. What it does is increase the radius of all your gyros, and at the end of the gyro effect you give AoE super speed for 3 seconds, which is super strong. You will have a lot of mobility for both your Zerg and your party. Yeah, that's a minor trait. Should I go? Do you want me to go over the minor traits too?
It's up to you.
I feel like they are pretty obvious, but I can do it. The first minor trait in Scrapper is Speed of Synergy, And you can use, every time you use a leap finisher or blast finisher in any type of field, you will give AoE. No, when you blast something, you will give AoE super speed. And when you leap or use a leap finisher, you will get personal super speed. The second normal trait, or the second line, you can take anything here, really. It's up to you. I take the middle one, Expert Examination, because I feel that's the only trait that gives any value to the group. All the other traits are personal. If you feel like Damage Dampener gives you something, take it. I've never used it. The second minor trait, Impact Savant, doesn't really matter. Maybe you should be aware that this minor trait gives you, removes 180 vitality, so you'll be lacking vitality. That's more important for the DPS scrapper than support scrapper. Grandmaster trait also doesn't really matter. If you feel like you're struggling with conditions, you can take Adaptive Armor. I don't take that trait at all. I don't feel like I need it. Instead, I take kinetic stabilizers. But the reason why I take that trait is because I run the Boon Strip build, which synergizes better with this trait than the standard version. That's the standard build. I can move on to, if there's no questions about the standard build, I'll move on to the Boon Strip build, which is exactly the same, but with tools and throw mine. And I think I linked the builds before, so you can look at them. So in Alchemy, if you look at Alchemy, you take the same traits, Scrapper, same traits, but you take tools instead of Inventions. So the first trait in tools is Reactive Lenses. It's really hard to play around. It happens when it happens. It's a stun break. Just a nice boon. The second trait is this trait, Streamlined Kits, and it's a nice trait, but hard to play around as well. If you right-click the trait, it will go over. Well, what it does is when you swap to a kit, you get swiftness and create an attack. And if you right-click the skill trait, you go over each kit, what it does. And we're using two kits, Medkit and Elixir Gun. Medkit gives a magnetic aura. Elixir Gun creates a immobilizing trail behind you. And this trail can be quite strong. It doesn't have a target cap, and the enemies can walk into it several times. So if you run straight into a blob and use it, you can catch a lot of people. The problem is we're swapping in and out of kits all the time, so it's going to be really hard to time it. So don't try to play around it, just use it when it happens. And the third line, the third trait.
Yo.
Sorry?
What are you?
We're doing scrapper training at the moment, so we're in Obsidian Sanctum.
Sorry.
Keep going, bro.
Yeah. The third trait is Gadgeteer. This is the reason why I take tools in the first place for the boon stripping build. This trait you can also right click to go over the different skills or changes. It changes your or boosts your gadget skills. And for throw mine, which usually when you use it throws one mine and that's it. With this trait you throw one mine and another mine appears under your feet. So you have two mines. And the mines, each mine strips 3 boons off of 5 targets, which is really strong. On top of that, it reduces the cooldown of throw mine to 12 seconds. And that's super strong. in Scrapper, we take the same traits, 1, 2, 2. And I mentioned the synergy between Thermine and kinetic stabilizers in Scrapper, the third trait. And the reason why this is so strong is that because Thermine is a knockback, and you will be seizing a lot of people all the time and getting personal stability and personal movement speed all the time. And that's important for your own positioning in the Zerg. Additionally, Throwmine is a blast finisher, which synergizes with speed of synergy. That trait, so you will also blast any type of field all the time, which gives AoE super speed to your group. And if you try this, you will quickly realize that as a support scrapper, you have the freedom to move around within a radius of the commander really freely, and you don't have to use your dodges or anything like that. You won't take much damage. It's a very easy build to play around. Those are the traits. There are other versions you can play around. Unbinding dodge. Yeah, definitely. Are there any questions about the traits or anything? No? Then I will move on to the skills, or the skills. Let's start with the weapon skills. I use hammer. I know that, yes, that's the seagull. I use hammer. Some people like to use pistol and shield. I feel like pistol and shield or hammer brings more to the Zerg than the pistol and shield. Mostly because of hammer 5, which is a 1200 range stun, AoE stun. It's really strong when you're trying to get off your range bomb. As a support scrapper, it doesn't deal any damage, but the stun and pulsing damage, which procs Aegis, allows the Revenants to hit their bomb really well. Yes, there are 3 defensive skills actually. We won't use number 1 skill at all. The number 2 skill on hammer, Electro Whirl, is a reflect. So if you see like your party member get pew-pewed by a ranger, you can step in and use number 2 to reflect some of the damage. The number 3 is a leap finisher. 3 leaps, but 2 of them are finishers. And it's an evasion. So if you get mesmer pulled, you can stun break and leap back to your Zerg. You can cancel hammer 3 if you swap into a kit when you're leaping, and then swap out not swap out, what's it called, weapon swap. You can cancel the leap. Hold on, let's see if I can. Yeah, you can interrupt that if you want to. Number 4 is a block, which is nice. Well, yeah, it's nice if you want to block something. Keep in mind that, yeah, it's really nice to interrupt that. 2 out of the 3 main cleansing skills that you have are pulsing cleanses. So if you want to pop Purge Gyro and then block, you can do that. And so you're basically safe while cleansing and blocking at the same time. So yeah, that's number 4. And number 5, the stun, which we always use on range bombs. Moving on to Medkit. The number 1 skill in Medkit is, I should say, you're going to spend most of your time as a support scrapper in Medkit in between cleansing and range bombing. You're gonna spam your healing skills in Medkit. And the number 1 skill is an auto attack which heals in a cone in front of you. Keep in mind that the cone is quite narrow, so you're going to have to aim a bit. There's something that you need to know about the number 1 skill. I don't know what the default setting is, if the default is autocasting enabled or disabled, but you need to have the autocasting enabled. And you can do this by control right click in the skill. If it's disabled and you cast number 1, you will be locked in the animation, even though you press a different skill in the medkit. So you want the skill enabled in order to be able to interrupt yourself with different skills. And again, you do that by control right clicking. Number 2 skill is med packs. It's a flat heal. It's a projectile, so don't use it in bubbles or it won't heal anything. And it heals. It's easier to hit all the med packs if you're standing next to someone. And each pack heals for about 2k. The 3rd skill is one of your 3 major cleansing field. This is a really nice skill if you're standing in a bubble, enemy bubble. You can drop it and get out and still cleanse people, obviously. The skill will land where you start casting, not where you end casting. So keep that in mind. Number 4, Vital Burst, is a flat heal around you. It can heal for 4k or more. Really nice, really short cooldown, 20 seconds. Number 5 skill is Infusion Bomb. This can be tricky to know when to use. It's really tempting to use it for the long boons. But I personally use it to get super speed or give super speed in a fight when there's maybe if we have a tail or something. It's really nice to drop this and give super speed. It looks like a projectile, but it doesn't count as one, so you can use it in bubbles. The utility skills, we take Purge Gyro. This is your 2nd major cleanse skill. I should also mention for cleansing field, medkit number 3, it has a 15-second cooldown, so it's really useful. And you don't waste it, but also use it when you need it. Same goes with Purge Gyro. Use it, 20-second cooldown, really powerful when we're moving or running into a blob or something. 2nd utility skill, in the standard build we will take probably Bulwark or Gyro, but I take Throw Mine. You can take Throw Mine even though you're not using tools traits. I don't think I've played with Bulwark Gyro for over a year. I don't feel like it gives something useful. Probably the most useful thing in Bulwark Gyro is the projectile destruction. Yeah, you can take Elixir R too. Yeah, definitely. I feel like the Bulwark Gyro slot is the slot that you can change to whatever you want, really. That's why I'm using Throw Mines. The 3rd utility skill is Elixir Gun. So let's swap into that. Number 1 skill, don't use it, it's useless. Number 2, don't use it, it's useless. Number 2 is probably the most useful skill in the game. Number 3 in Elixir Gun is our 3rd major cleanse skill. It has 5 targets, that's enemy targets, but it also cleanses 5 allies. So effectively it has 10 targets. This skill, the animation of this skill will aim toward your target but actual cleansing is going to be in a cone in front of you. It's channeled, so it's over the duration of the casting, which is 2 seconds and 1/4. 5 cleanses. It's a really strong skill, 12 seconds cooldown. You want to use this in between your Medkit cleanse and your Purge Gyro, and use it all the time. It's also nice if you get through the enemy bomb to your commander and people are lagging behind, you can turn around and cleanse people behind. For example, if they get yes, this is the only cleansing skill that doesn't cleanse yourself. It's only cleansing allies. So keep that in mind too. Both the Medkit cleanse and the Purge Gyro are cleansing you as well. Number 4 skill is Acid Bomb. It's a leap backwards, and you don't want to use this. Well, try not to leap into the enemy blob, but it's quite useful to catch up with the blob if you're caught behind, or yeah, it's also a blast finisher, so you can blast. And similarly with Hammer 3, you can interrupt this leap by weapon swapping out of the kit using the weapon swap skill, key. And number 5 is Super Elixir. This is a projectile, so don't use it in a bubble or reflect wall. It cleanses one condition, and poses heals for 11 seconds. It also heals. I think it can heal for 2.5k, so it's just a nice sustain. That's Elixir Gun. Moving Sneak Arrow is probably the most used elite skill, and here is where the variations come in with the Algorithm runes. The builds for Algorithm are the same as the ones I've linked, but the only difference is that you take superior rune of Algorithm, and instead of Sneak Arrow you take Mortar Kit. And the idea of the build is that the runes make it so that when you use an elite skill, you drain one condition from 5 players around you. And Mortar Kit doesn't have a cooldown, and neither does the rune, so you'll be spamming Mortar Kit to drain conditions from your allies. I personally don't play that build because I don't want to walk around with a lot of conditions on myself, but it's a strong build. If you feel confident in your engineer gameplay, you can use it. Just be aware that you might drain Immobilize or Fear or Taunt, which can fuck you up. Yeah. But it's a strong build. You get a lot of cleanses, and you can play it with the stripper setup, boon strip setup, as well as the standard setup. The tool belt skill, if we look at those, then the first one is Bandage Self, and this is your actual healing skill, moved away from the number 6 key. I don't think I've used it at all, unless I'm actually dying. So yeah, use it when you need it. The second one is Chemical Field from Purge Gyro. You can drop it if there's down players, otherwise don't pay any attention to it. If you're running throw mines, you will get Minefield. It's a very slow cast time, but the skill is really strong. It's 5 mines around you, which strips 1 boon. So if you have time to cast it, do it if you're inside a blob. For Elixir Gun, you will get the only stun break of the entire build. Healing Mist. I don't think you will be using it a lot, since you'll have Guardians who stab you and your personal stability from the traits. And then you have Function Gyro. I can link the builds again. Those are the builds that I'm talking about right now. Support Scrapper. Function gyro. What it does is create a gyro at if someone's down to res it. I have never seen a successful res in a blob fight. It's so weak. It takes 1 CC for it to die, and if it gets stabbed, it has 10,000 health, so it dies really easily. Unless you have a commander that you know will call for function reses, it's better off using it for the super speed than anything else. Yeah, that's the skills. Is there anything else I need to say? Throw mine is throw mine is unblockable. Mine is unblockable. It looks like a projectile, but it doesn't count as one. And explosion is unblockable, so you will hit it every time. The cooldown of throw mine starts when you cast it. So and it lasts for 60 seconds. So if you leave it for 12 seconds and use it, or someone walks on it, you can throw a new one immediately. That's just a nice perk. Otherwise, is there any questions, or is it all clear? Then I'll move on to DPS Scrapper. Right.
But hang on, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Ponty says, push. What do you do? Where are you? What are you starting off in? What are you moving to? What's the rotation?
Yes, it totally depends. We're playing a very forgiving and a very reactive build, so it depends on what's going on. If Ponty says push straight into the enemy blob, and you know they will bomb you, you're going to want to use Purge Gyro for sure, because we're moving and everyone's moving with you. This is the only cleanse that moves with you. So that's the first one. But you can also drop the medkit. You want to focus on the cleansing, so people don't get stuck. And the important thing is that you get through and survive, and then you can turn around and heal and cleanse and whatnot. So it's a bit selfish in that regard, but you're doing it so you can support everyone else. If we're strafing, if we're facing a good like Whiteside Ridge or a good blob, and we're pirate shipping and strafing back and forth, you will probably want to time hammer a lot and spam medkit number 1 until something important happens, like we're actually pushing or being pushed. And keep in mind that the cleanses, Purge Gyro and Cleansing Field in medkit are pulsing, so you can do stuff while they're cleansing, like using Throw Mine or Hammer or even Elixir Gun 3 to get more cleanses off. So you can do a lot of stuff while being useful. But yeah, as I said, it's a very reactive build or play style, and you're going to have to judge by the situation you're in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? I'll move on to the DPS Scrapper. And there's a lot of DPS Scrapper builds I've seen, but the idea of the build is the same. Try to survive until you can drop your DPS rotation, and after that try to survive again. I'll link one build that I have, but it's not the best. This is basically just to get an idea what the build is about. The traits aren't entirely what they should be, but you want to run as DPS Scrapper. You want to run either full Berserker or a mix of Berserker and Marauders. You want to run, I think you can run as runes, you can run Scholar or Eagle runes, depending on how much pressure you're taking, I think. And then, of course, Hammer. For traits, you will be using Explosives, Firearms, and Scrapper. And in the Explosives, the first line you can sort of take either Short Fuse or Glass Cannon. I prefer Glass Cannon, but I see that I've linked Short Fuse. And then in the second line, you can take Explosive Temper or Blast Shield. I usually take Blast Shield for the increased health percentage, because you lose health by taking Scrapper trait line. So yeah, I prefer that one. And then lastly, you take Big Boomer for extra damage. In Firearms, you take, hold on, which one do you take?
High caliber if you're trying to crit cap.
High caliber.
Yeah, High Caliber is probably better than the blue one. And then you take No Scope for Ferocity when you have Fury. And then you can take Modified Ammunition, or if you feel like your Guardian is not providing enough stability, you can use Juggernaut and use Flamethrower. I didn't mention it, but you can use either Bomb Kit or Flamethrower. Personally, I like Flamethrower because it allows me to position myself in the fight and still deal damage. It has a longer range. But I don't know which one deals the highest damage, to be honest. And for Scrapper,
Juggernaut.
Yes, Juggernaut.
Yeah, that's the highest.
Yeah. For Scrapper, you want to use Big Arrows again. It increases your Shredder Gyro so you can stay out of the bomb and still deal damage. And then you want to take the damage traits, which is object in motion in the second line and applied force in this third line. And that's pretty much the build. You take all the possible damage traits you can on Engineer and then just go ham. In difference to the support Scrapper, it's much more about positioning, because if you get caught, you will die. And yeah, that's it. For healing skills, you can take Medgyro, or yeah, probably Medgyro, and then Shred Gyro and Bomb Kit or Flamethrower. The third utility skill is a little bit unclear. You can take. Personally, I like to take Purge Gyro here for cleanses, just for that matter. But you can take what's it called, Elixir U, which gives you quickness. Yes. It's also a stun break, and it synergizes with the applied force traits, which gives 200 power when you have quickness. But I feel like there's many different viable options for this utility trait. And then of course, elite skill, Sneak Arrow is probably the most solid choice of all. And that's DPS Scrapper, unless someone has something more to add. I'm not used to play DPS Scrapper that much. I played it a bit, but yeah.
I suppose I could add a couple things on.
Yeah, please.
Well, basically how I play the DPS Scrapper on the public is that I don't run the burst gyro unless it's like really needed, like meaning like my fireband really sucks. So basically, let me just link the bill.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So only idea on this build is basically deal as much damage as possible.
You wanna link the build in Say chat?
I link it on a squad chat, I think. Is
Okay.
it on a Say chat? No, it's
No,
on the
squad
squad chat. Okay, so basically the traits are pretty much the same. One thing particularly why I run both the flamethrower and the bomb kit is number 5 skill on the bomb kit. This is really nice immobilize to drop on enemy feet when you're pushing through them. Like this is this screws up so many people every push, just that it's not even funny. It just needs to be timed perfectly, so otherwise it's just hit and miss. It has 1 second fuse time, so you need to sort of predict where the enemy is going to be on the 1 second when you drop the looting. For the flamethrower, if you look at the traits, some reason I cannot link the trait. Okay, great. Anyhow, let's speed up synergy from second minor trait. It gives the 5-second super speed every time you blast finish or something. And if you take a look at the number 2 skill of the flamethrower, it has the 6 seconds internal cooldown, and it's a blast finisher. So basically, you have 1 second window where you can provide super speed for your party, because there's always a field on you when you're fighting something. So basically, you just keep dropping it on your feet every single time. It doesn't have to be even on your feet. It's just wherever there's a field, and it will proc it around you. Like, it's pretty huge radius, 360. So you almost have a permanent super speed during the fight if you just remember keep dropping it down.
Yeah. I just wanted to answer Polaris' question about retaliation. The second minor trait in Scrapper is pretty much negating any retaliation. A percentage of the damage you deal is converted into barrier. And if you have enough sustain in your party to keep your health up, you will have enough barrier to negate the retaliation of enemies, or hitting enemies.
Yeah, the retaliation is not really an issue for the Scrapper, to be honest. But yeah, for the DPS Scrapper, you are scrushy as fuck. So if you get caught, you don't have a stun rate. You are fucked. So you need to be good with the dodges, because the difference between the good DPS Scrapper and the mediocre DPS Scrapper is quite huge. It's not for everybody, but yeah, it can deal quite a tons of damage. And of course, the cleave on the tag, which is most of the time pretty important to determine if the fight is going to get win or not. But yeah, that's pretty much the DPS Scrapper. On a nutshell.
I didn't have anything else to add either. Yeah.
Any questions, guys? No.
The only lesson I learned from all this is that I just sit on my flamethrower because I have permanent
Maybe we can try
stab.
something if everyone uses mortar kit.
1-1-1 on permanent stab.
And we shoot
Pretty
over
much,
here.
yeah.
If everyone shoots over here.
You can 1-on-1, but if you position badly, then
I just want to see everyone shoot.
You want everybody to see?
One thing with the mortar kit, if you enable action camera, you're able to hit siege on walls that you wouldn't normally be able to hit.
cool pog.
Come on, guys, more mortar kits. What are they?
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. How does that work? Though? Do you know?
Changes the angle that it casts at. So you can, if you aim
Are you sure
higher,
about that, Craig?
yes.
'Cause I think it's
We
more
just
difficult
need
with
the
action
50
camera.
Scrappers and do this and keep kiting an enemy but with the permanent super speed.
So the kata spot on South Bay, if you stand on the side
So-
and try and use your
That's
non-action
great.
Easy
camera.
win, Ponty.
Exactly.
Yeah, they cannot even read, so they're like, fucking shit, they're dropping crap on us, and they just keep
Yeah.
going.
And one reflector and we all die.
Ah, man.
Pretty much.
The thing is, it has to come back, right? So we super speed walk out of it.
Uh-huh.
Big brain.
Exactly. All right. Well, Asura, thank you so much for the training, bro. And 5 pixels off again, and everybody else for attending.
No worries.